Appreciate the introduction. I want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. As Jody mentioned, this is the 4th in our series of Enterprise Data Lifecycle Management webinars. So my purpose today, I'm really only going to take just a couple of minutes. I'm going to be introducing Lily, who's our key speaker from VW Credit. And what I wanted to do is just to kind of put a definition to EDLM and put the enterprise content management in the context of EDLM for you, and then I will turn it right over to Lily. So EDLM, or Utopia, we are a services consulting company, a global company, and we're focused on enterprise data lifecycle management, or EDLM. And what that is essentially is a combination of the processes, the strategies, as well as the technologies to manage and improve the overall life cycle of data or the information across your entire enterprise. So we help our clients to develop enterprise data governance strategies and roadmaps, manage their data, and to really make data a true corporate asset. Our services really span the entire life cycle, from creation to migration and to data governance framework, as well as archiving. So if we go to the next slide, Jody, to put ECM and archiving in the context of EDLM, EDLM, if we take a look at this illustration, is really, it's not a project, it's not a one-off. It's really a continuous iterative process. So if you take a look at the top right and we think about how do people manage data within the enterprise, data is generally created through multiple avenues, whether it be through your business applications, whether it be through forms, electronic forms, perhaps like an Adobe, or through Microsoft Office, or of course paper-based forms as well. So the data gets created, and then the data needs to get managed, which means it needs to get cleansed and consolidated. You need to be able to match and merge the data between systems. You need to sometimes be able to enhance the data, enriching it through third-party sources. You also want to be able to cleanse that data and normalize it against a corporate standard. So there are a lot of tools out there. Utopia is hardware, software agnostic. We work with a lot of different tools. We have certifications in SAP, Business Objects, MDM, as well as we do a lot of work with Dataflux as well in order to be able to cleanse data. And then at the end of that bottom area there is, of course, the governance. And the governance is really the process or the underlying foundation. It's not just about technology. You can't only use technology to keep your data clean or archive your data. In this case, you really have to have a process embedded, and you have to attach that, or attach the technology, link it to your business process, to your business applications framework, and have all of your business analysts and your business teams involved in it. And then the last piece, of course, is the archiving and the access of the data. And this is, in the circle, it's the last piece, but it's a very, key piece, because data does have an end of life, especially when we think about compliance issues. We think about systems being sunsetted or decommissioned. You do need to have a way to archive off your data but still have access to it. You also have to be able to, very importantly, marry the unstructured data, so things like images, forms, things that you get from your customers and vendors. You have to be able to put that in the context of your business applications. So this, in total, is really our view of EDLM and what we support. As I said, we support a lot of different vendor technologies, and we do really support a very comprehensive EDLM framework that allows our customers to leverage data as a strategic asset. So that's really all I wanted to cover as far as the context of archiving and ECM, enterprise content management, in the context of EDLM. What I want to do now is I'm going to be turning it over to Lily Flam. And if we go to the next slide, Jody. Lily is a project manager over at VW Credit, who I've been working with for the last better part of about 3 months or so now. So I think this picture kind of sums it up, I think, for a lot of us in the way that we treat, paper-based forms and the way that information is looked at within the corporation. I know a lot of companies have initiatives to go paperless. A lot of times that ends up creating a lot more paper rather than getting rid of it. There is definitely a better way to do it. VW Credit undertook a project in order to ultimately become paperless over the next couple of years, and this is the first project that they went with that we've been helping them with for the last couple of months. So I'm going to turn it over to Lily Flam, and I'll let you take it away. Thanks very much, Lily, for joining us.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so I'm just going to take control here. And go. All right, so I'm going to be walking you through our project, our Enterprise Document Management, or EDM project. And I'll start off with a quick intro to our company and what it is that we do, discuss my role on the project, and then give you a picture of what the current state of our business is, what the management vision is for the future, talk about the solution that we're currently implementing, what the benefits are that we foresee, then talk about some of the lessons learned, and then the benefits of working with Utopia. So Volkswagen Credit Inc., or VW Credit Inc., or we also are known as VCI, is a subsidiary of Volkswagen Group of America, and Volkswagen Group of America, of course, reports up to Volkswagen in Germany. But our primary business is as the financial arm of Volkswagen Credit, and we extend leases, retail loans. We also offer credit cards and extended service contracts to our customers, the actual drivers. But we also do have some business with our dealers as well, providing wholesale loans to finance the fleet of automobiles that they are selling from their lots. We also offer capital loans, so if they need to purchase equipment for their service departments, or even mortgages for financing the buildings, their dealerships. So we offer a wide array of financial products to not only the actual drivers but also our dealers. And these financial products are centered around four brands. So Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley, and then we do some business for Lamborghini. Volkswagen Credit Inc. is headquartered in Herndon, Virginia. We just recently moved there from Auburn Hills. And then we also do have service centers in Chicago, suburbs actually of Chicago, Portland, and Montreal. And within those service centers we have several functions such as customer service, our collections department, we have a credit and funding department, and some shared services such as the finance and accounting areas as well as IT. We also do have a field sales force that's located across the United States in the Pacific, Central, Eastern, and Southern regions, as well as an office in Canada. So in total, we've got about 1,000 employees that we're working with. And then my role on this project, so I'm a project manager in the application development area of IT, and obviously focusing a lot on the pure project management activities such as planning, risk management, etc. But at Volkswagen Credit, I also get an opportunity to dabble in some of the non-project management related activities, such as doing some of the financial analysis. So I got to see a lot of the build-up to this project actually being approved, and was part of the scoring process that all projects go through here at Volkswagen Credit. I also got to get my hands dirty in the procurement process and have worked very closely with Peggy DeFranceschi, who's our purchasing manager. So, saw a lot of demos from various vendors, was very involved in reviewing statements of work and the negotiations that got us to where we are today. So just a little background on the current state of our business. This is actually from a presentation that our leadership team saw, and this is what was reviewed before the project actually got approved. And so basically Volkswagen Credit does have documents that are in multiple unintegrated locations. Our various offices have documents in shared drives, and we've got things over here that other locations cannot access. We do have a legacy document storage system, but the individuals here in customer care and collections, the only way that they can retrieve those documents is by doing a search on account number. If they wanted to look it up perhaps by a customer's name or a VIN, they would not be able to do that in the system that we have today. It's very old, and it's not able to provide us some of the flexibility that a new solution would. So that was definitely an issue, and then just no enterprise solution being in place. We had 2 one-off imaging solutions that are being used. We did use Cardiff, but it did not have the OCR capabilities, and the version that we were running on was actually not being supported anymore. So we had a couple of issues, not only on the imaging side, but then even on the document storage side. And it just made it difficult for us to access our information, but even to get the information in. There's a bullet here about outdated and manual processes. Prior to implementing OCR, which is another project that precedes even this EDM one, we were applying barcode labels to all of our documents so that we could attach an account number to the document as well as assign a document type to it. And this was taking 5 individuals 4 hours out of their day applying barcode labels. So not a lot of value add, and definitely not very fulfilling work, to say the least. So this was definitely a driver for the project because the current process was definitely very labor-intensive and costly, error-prone, and inefficient. Furthermore, with the AP and purchasing processes that we have, they're using paper documents for a requisition or a purchase order. These documents had to be walked around the building to get signatures for approval and then eventually make it back to our purchasing department for a purchase. AP would receive invoices, and it's kind of the same process of putting a stamp on it that it was received and then walking it around for approvals, and you hope that the invoice makes it back to the AP department for payment. But nowhere in that process are you able to really track where the document is and when it's going to be back to you. So there was definitely a need on that end as well for some automation. And then finally, this finance source project that Volkswagen Credit has undertaken, the goal is to go completely paperless with our funding process. So from when a customer goes into a dealership until we approve the loan, all of that process would be handled through a dealer extranet, basically, where all the paperwork would be sent electronically, or I guess you wouldn't even call it paperwork anymore. The information would be sent electronically and then stored in a document management system. And like I said, the legacy system that we have in place today is not, or would not be able to handle that new process. And so that was definitely another driver for moving to a document management system. So management's vision for this document management project is to have an enterprise-wide system, so VCI, which is the U.S., and VCCI, which is Volkswagen Credit Canada, Inc., and to have an integrated system for storage and archiving and retrieval of those documents. You'd be able to index and retrieve all the images and create customer and dealer and vendor documents. So basically, having that shared access, having it on demand, and being able to send it to someone if need be. And then every area within VCI would be able to use the system. So kind of all these different areas that I mentioned before. So Auburn Hills, we still have some functions out there, such as our marketing and sales individuals, risk and legal. And then all of our service centers our region offices, and our auction department. So the solution that we're putting in place is open text, live link, and how we got to that product I can discuss a little bit more maybe after the session, but basically it is our German standard. Volkswagen in Germany uses the product currently for email and FSA, and so we wanted to try to keep within the same portfolio of products and also leverage some of the relationships that we already had established with OpenText. So we're going to be using that product for the VCI docs replacement. So importing all of the documents currently in VCI docs into that new LiveLink system, as well as putting all new documents in there. And these documents are credit and funding packages. So basically, all of the paperwork that gets filled out when you lease a vehicle or take out a loan, that currently gets sent to us in big FedEx packages every day. We scan them in, and then they get stored off into VCI docs. And as I mentioned before, eventually that will turn into the finance source process where all of that will be electronic. So that's the first piece. And then we've got a couple of workflows that Utopia is assisting us with implementing. Now with those two workflows, we had looked at a wide array of products, but eventually determined that the LiveLink workflows were capable of handling the work that we were trying to do. So our purchasing department, they have requisitions as well as purchase orders. Those will now become web forms, and individuals will fill them out online, and then they'll be routed through the proper process to get signatures for approval, and then eventually on to our purchasing department for payment, or not for payment, for a purchase order to be sent out. Now, during that workflow process, we'll be able to track where a document is in the process. We've also been able to set time limits for each step of the process. So if something is kind of falling behind, perhaps we set a 24 or 72-hour time period that somebody has to provide their approval. If they're falling behind, they will get an email notification saying that your step is late, please address this. There are also ways to escalate something so that if an individual is out of the office, it'll move on to a backup, basically, to be processed. So this is a far better process than what we have in place, and definitely will provide us with some audit capabilities as well. And then it's very similar for AP as well. So invoices will now be scanned in, and we'll be able to OCR critical information off of those invoices, and then be able to route those invoices around for approval, and then integrate with Oracle Financials to actually pay some of our bills. So again, taking out a lot of the manual process, being able to track where things are, and having that audit trail. So we can add some accountability into the process as well. With property tax, it was interesting. This we thought was going to be a workflow, but it ended up that it was really just tweaking the existing process. So we will be imaging or scanning our property tax bills, and we'll be pulling information off of that and storing the documents. And I failed to mention that all of the documents related to the workflows will actually be stored in LiveLink. But for property tax, we'll store those invoices, and then taking that information that was pulled off of the bills from OCR, putting that into a table, and then creating a receivables file for our receivables system, and then also an AP file to actually go pay these property tax bills. But Utopia just did a great job of kind of focusing in on the process, kind of what pieces were actually needed. We determined that there was actually a piece of software that we were using that really was not a value add and didn't really serve any purpose in the property tax payment process. And by implementing this new process, we're able to eliminate the cost of keeping that software and maintaining it, and basically create our own table and generate those files on our own. So that is the solution we're currently working towards implementing. We do have a very tight time frame. Basically, we started the project in September, and we're hoping to have everything in place by mid-December. And so far, we're right on track. So the benefits that we're hoping to realize by implementing the project is to see some reduced operational costs just from the sheer reduction in amount of manual work that will need to be done. We will also see, hopefully, an improved quality of the work that's being done, increased efficiency, increased customer satisfaction, because we'll be able to have those documents right away, and our entire office will be able to have shared access to those documents rather than just kind of siloed access. Higher employee engagement, because people are no longer applying barcode labels and walking things around. They'll actually be spending more time on value-added work. Legal and compliance advantages. So another thing with LiveLink is that we'll be able to apply some records management functionality. So determining that perhaps our funding packages only need to be held for the term of the loan or lease plus an additional 7 years, and at that point those documents can be purged. Today we're holding on to everything since we started scanning, which was in 2000. So we'll be able to free up a lot of our storage space as a result of this project as well. And then I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen out of this so far is that other departments have become very interested in this project. Initially, when it kicked off, this was supposed to be an enterprise-wide implementation, and we quickly realized that that was going to spin out of control. We had to start small. I love Alex's term of boil the ocean. That's exactly what we were trying to do, and it wasn't working. So we realized we had to bite off just a small part of it and start with that and show our successes. And that would be great advertising for the other departments and spark a lot of interest, and we have seen that happen. Already we've got HR submitting a request to have all of their personnel files imaged and stored electronically so that they have a disaster recovery process in place, because today they basically store all of those files in paper in a giant file cabinet that is not fireproof. So huge risk there. The other department is our payoff department. They deal a lot with titles and receiving live checks in the office. So, imaging checks and being able to image titles and that sort of thing could all potentially be done here in implementing some additional workflows for their departments. So definitely a lot of buzz and requests for projects already coming in, and I'm very excited to see what else comes through in the future. Some of the lessons learned from this project, we're still, a while away from getting to our live date, but we've definitely learned some things, such as that the vendor's professional services is not always the best or only option, I should say. When we worked with OpenText, we worked primarily with the sales individuals at the beginning, and then there was this logical handoff to professional services. But we kind of went with the flow rather than looking at what our other options were, what other organizations were out there, and quickly realized that we needed to do that legwork. So the next bullet point, which is to talk to industry groups and get references, is basically what we did in the summer of this year. I reached out to DocuLabs out in Chicago and talked to an individual there about the project that we were trying to undertake, and just kind of not only implementation, but also the process around it that needed to be kind of reviewed and understood. And so they recommended Utopia, and we didn't even realize that they were just down the street from us. And we found that they were able to provide the great work, able to work within our deadlines, and we've established, I think, a very strong partnership. We're very glad that we found Utopia because until that point, things were not moving. And once they came into the picture, our project really took off, and we are going to be able to meet our live date in December. The other piece that we've found is that you really need to have a clear understanding of what you need before you purchase. So in our project, we went ahead and just purchased whatever was told that we needed based on a very high-level understanding of the project. As we got into the implementation, though, we realized, oh, we don't need Oracle people. We don't need an AP module. We don't need this and that. So it was interesting that we kind of over-purchased up front, and had we done some of this more detailed analysis up front with the vendor, I think we would have only purchased what we needed rather than the extra. So those are some of the key learnings immediately, at least, and I'm sure that once the implementation is complete, there will be many more things. So just some points on the benefits of working with Utopia. I've been very impressed. This project has been a roller coaster in terms of working with various vendors and various people. But with Utopia, I think the greatest value that they've brought to us is this dynamic staff with focused expertise. So they have people that are focused on Oracle, focused on LiveLink, people that are kind of flexible in that they are very technical, but they also have very strong project management skills. So you kind of get the whole package, and you get exactly what you need. And if Utopia doesn't have those exact resources on hand, they're able to bring those individuals in to assist with maybe a specific piece of your project. I've heard from day one that, we will do what you need. Just tell us what you need, and we're here for you. And that is not just lip service, but I've actually seen that, come to fruition for us. Anything that we need, it happens. They bend over backwards to get us anything that we need and meet the deadlines that we have in place. We were very impressed just with the scoping engagement, how individuals could come in, not have any knowledge of our company or our business, and within the matter of a few days have this very holistic view of our business and of the problems that we were facing, and they were able to come up with this map of how to address the problem and kind of see how all the pieces fit together. We had been dealing with some other individuals for quite a long time, and we hadn't gotten there. So that was very impressive, how quickly they were able to pinpoint those issues and start coming up with solutions. But not only solutions, also contingencies. The project manager from Utopia that we have on site was very good at identifying kind of the red flags, but then also talking about how do we address it and what is the plan B. So has built a lot of confidence with me and with the individuals on our project team, knowing that we're in good hands with him. Also from a pricing perspective, we found that the pricing is very competitive compared to other individuals in their space. So that was definitely a key advantage as well of working with Utopia. And then finally, just the depth of experience, because many of the individuals had worked in the corporate setting as well as consulting. So they kind of had both sides of the fence, if you will, in terms of experience. And so that definitely brought a lot of value to our project and with the solutions that we came up with as well. So that's it for me, and thank you very much. I'll hand it off to, I believe, Peter, you're next.
Thank you very much, Lily. This is Alex. Really appreciate you sharing your experience and the experience at VCI. We obviously appreciate your business, and we truly feel like it's you've let us come in and become a partner and really make a difference within the organization. So, I think what we take away from it and what we heard you, say today is, the importance of making it part of the overall business process and enabling efficiencies within the business. That when things really happen is when you turn it from an IT project into a business process efficiency, business gain for the company. So we appreciate you sharing all of that information. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning, we will take some questions. If anybody has questions for Lily or for Peter coming up, go ahead and use the chat function, and we'll address those at the end. And at this point, Lily talked a lot about their project, which included the live link, the document management and workflows within the purchasing and financial documents management. Peter will kind of take a look at holistically the whole ECM space and what does it include, specifically some areas around SAP, non-SAP systems, and putting unstructured data in the overall EDLM function. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peter Ainsley Hartwell, who's our Senior VP of Solution Consulting.
Thank you very much, Alex. As Lily said, we've been doing a project at VCI around document management and around making sure that the business processes efficiency have been improved. One of the things that is driving that around the globe in many organizations is the fact that in many, many cases, 90% of the information or the content that an organization has is in some sort of unstructured format, whether it be a document, whether it be in emails, whether it be websites that have information on them, and really only about 10% of a company's information or data is stored in a structured manner in their ERP system or some sort of other operational system that they're using. And one of the things that is driving people to look around how to improve the management of that information is that the regulatory environment is getting much tougher for people to work within, and there's lots of requirements on people to be able to get information at the touch of the fingertips, as they say. So there's a lot of issues that come up around management of this information. There's a lot of business issues. As I said, around about 90% of all the content is unstructured. That drives a lot of labor-intensive searches for information when people are looking for it. So that's something that's sort of driving people towards trying to automate that process. The operating costs and the cost per transaction are getting higher as there's more requirements to keep track of information and where it came from and so on. There's huge business continuity risks. If you lose information, if you haven't got hard copy documents stored in fireproof safes and all those sorts of things, then you're carrying a big risk as far as business continuity goes. And also, a lot of older systems nowadays are becoming obsolete, difficult to maintain, hard to find people who even understand the code that was used to write them. And that leads to a lot of pressure, especially on IT departments. The business is basically asking the IT department to provide them with innovative solutions that improve their efficiency but don't increase their cost. Making sure that we've got a lot of improvement in our ability to get this data back and make sure that it's being used appropriately within the organization. You've also got the issue around content, storage. The cost of storage is getting lower, but it's still quite high. And these sorts of things are driving people to look for much more innovative solutions. And one of the biggest things around that is the regulatory pressures. The pressures around, as I said, making sure that you've got all this information at your fingertips. There's a number of rules, a number of laws that companies are required to conform to. In many cases, I think you need an information management system just to know what regulations and laws you are supposed to conform to. Because that changes, it changes depending on where you're doing business as well. Sometimes these things are applicable in the United States, sometimes they're applicable in other countries where companies may be doing business as well. So it's very, very important to actually understand what some of those issues are. what some of those requirements are, what all of the requirements are actually, to make sure that you can actually maintain your data and your information. As we said before, you'll find that the cost of data storage is quite high, but people often think that the highest cost is the hardware. In actual fact, that's not true at all. The cost of hardware is going down. The technology is getting better. You can store more for a lot cheaper. What is really the largest cost in maintaining this is the cost of personnel. It's the process around how do I retrieve the data. It's the process of how do I find the exact document that I'm looking for to be able to prove a particular point or to be able to answer a specific question that we were asked by the regulators. So it's very important that when you're looking at this sort of stuff that you don't just look at this from the point of view of the cost of hardware, the cost of the hard disks, that we also look at it from the point of view of how do I make sure that my processes are going to be improved. As Alex said during our introduction, we focus on the enterprise data lifecycle management, and around the ECM, the enterprise content management, you have to take into account both the structured data. You have to make sure that you're looking at what your requirements are for archiving, etc., of data that's in your ERP system or your operational system. Look at the unstructured data. Look at all the documents that you're collecting. Look at emails. Look at print lists. Look at all those sorts of things that are coming. And the most important thing is to make sure that the process and the technology that you put in place allows those two to be joined together, that it allows the unstructured data to be linked with the relevant record or whatever that is in the ERP system. Because these documents are getting collected for a reason. They're not just getting collected because people like collecting paper. They're getting collected because they form part of a business process. And it's absolutely critical that when they form part of that business process, and that business process includes a record in your ERP system or your operational system, that the unstructured data is also attached to that particular record. So if you look at what we look at from a structured data point of view, we look at it as a pyramid where you have the master data as the foundation of the pyramid. On top of that, you add conditional data, which are things like pricing and contracts and those sorts of things. And then finally, you end up with the transactional data. And the transactional data is what people are generating day in, day out. And it's normally made up as a combination of conditional data and master data. And it is typically the transactional data and the master data where you get the most of your unstructured content coming. Around master data, it's things like when you're creating a customer master, all the forms that they have to fill in. They give you all the information. And then you have to be sure that the data that was entered into the ERP system is exactly what was on the form. When you're creating transactional data, maybe during the accounts payable process, you're receiving an invoice from your vendor, and you want to make sure that you've got a copy of the original invoice that's being referenced in the payables record in your ERP system. So that's a main area where the content has to match with the structured data. If you look at it from the content pyramid, it's a little bit the other way around. You start with the record. You have some documents, whether they're images, web pages, all sorts of things. And those documents then contain content. And very often the content that's in those documents then needs to be taken and fed back and added to the record that was actually that started the process. And the whole point of this is to essentially extend the knowledge that's available within the organization, make it easier for more people to have access to this information, makes it easier for people to answer queries when they come up, especially when it's to do with vendor or customer queries with all the information available, easy accessible. It makes it very much easier to answer those queries and to improve the levels of service that are being provided. What you need to have a look at when you're looking at an ECM landscape is that there's many different areas that need to be incorporated. You have the capture area where you need a process for capturing this information, and they can be coming from human created information, office documents, forms, microfilm, rich media, all those sorts of things, or they may actually be coming out of a system, and you want to actually store the output from a system. And you're going to use a number of technologies for doing that, the OCR, ICR, IDR, those sorts of things. Once you get them into the system, you've got the whole process of managing those documents and managing that data. So how are you going to distribute it? As Lily was talking about, putting in workflows so that you can have approval steps built into the system, escalation, those sorts of things. You've got to store those documents somewhere so that they're easy to retrieve, but you've also got to make sure that they're archived out of the live system so that you can ensure that your system performance stays at the levels that you require. And then finally, you've got to be able to deliver those documents to the various people that are going to want them. So you have to have a look at the different technologies that might be used for that, whether it be intranet, internet, portals, email, all those sorts of things. Particularly nowadays, the mobile device area is becoming very important, and a lot of people are looking for the ability to see these documents in mobile devices. So one of the things I'm going to go through now is just really take you through 3 scenarios where the ECM approach is very relevant and where it might be of use for your own businesses to have a look. In this particular case, I'm going to have a look at processing a bill in SAP where you get the paper document and then you have a record. In SAP, you have the input process, and during that input process, those hard copy documents would be scanned and converted to electronic documents. They would then be stored in the storage system, which would be OpenText, and also then you would make an attachment of those documents to the particular record that's in SAP. And then at the end of it, you want to make sure that whenever anybody is looking at that particular record in SAP, that these documents are available to them to reference, so that they can actually have a look at the scanned copy and be sure that the information that's in that record in SAP contains the same information that was actually in the hard copy. And then there's going to be some sort of output that comes from the ERP system, whether that be a check, whether it can be a remittance notice, those sorts of things in this particular case. So you're going to get some sort of output. And what you don't want to have to do is then go and scan that information again and attach it back to your record. So what you can do is you can set the system up so that these outputs from your ERP system can be stored, can be caught and stored, and then attached back to the same record, attached in the same system. And that way you've got all of the documents that are related to that particular process stored in the one system. Another scenario that is worthwhile looking at is the data archiving. So in this particular case, and this example is done with SAP, but it can be any of the ERP systems, you would typically access your system, select the data that needs to be archived, so go through and make sure that you've got all the information, the process is complete, create a data file that contains all that information. You then go through and delete that data from your ERP system so that you can clean up and free that system up, improve the performance, and then you go through the process of creating the archive and putting it into the LiveLink enterprise server. Take those archive files and transfer them to the archive server. Do the feedback into SAP to say, yes, this transfer has been complete, and that now we have the link created between the application server, SAP, and the LiveLink server, so that SAP knows that these documents are now archived, and when it needs to retrieve the information, it doesn't go to the live database, it now goes to the archive database. And then once that's done, you can actually then delete those archive files. And now you have a system where you have transferred that information out of the live ERP database and across into an archive server. But the good thing with using the OpenText solution is still accessible from your application server, from SAP application server, and in many cases the user doesn't really know whether that information is coming from the archive or coming from the live database. Another scenario that's very important is around legacy decommissioning. A lot of companies now have, as we said before, have got systems that are old technology. They've got many, many years of information in them. They're going about putting in a new ERP system such as SAP or Oracle, and they don't really want to move 20 years worth of closed transactions across into the new system and completely clutter the new system with all this old information. So our recommendation in that case is to basically move that information directly into an archive server. And the process for doing that is essentially you can take print lists and documents out of your old system, go through the SAP Document Access Cold module. That will move documents into the enterprise server, and at the same time create indices that make it easy to look up these documents, and then you can look them up from your new live system. In this case, it would be SAP. So you've got access to those print lists and documents from SAP then. So people don't have to go into a different system to see all this old data. They can actually see it from their new system. And one of the things that we've been talking to a lot of companies about, and a lot of companies are interested in, is as well as just taking print lists and documents, essentially create archive files from the legacy system in the same format that the new ERP system would create. So create them in that format and then load them into the archive server, following a similar process to the slide we saw just a moment ago, so that essentially people don't see any difference between the data that was in the legacy system and moved to the new live system and data that was actually moved directly to the archiving system and the documents that were moved directly to the archiving system. And then once you've done that, you can remove your legacy system from your landscape. And one of the critical things we believe in this whole process is to make sure that online and offline documents and data are transparent to users. So you want to have some simple retrieval process that is basically linked with the business process. Once you've done that, you can make sure then that your online data and your offline data are also visible from the one screen. And people can see all of the information related to that particular business process all from the one screen. And this is one of the things where we particularly like the OpenText solution. I think it's a very good solution in that particular case. One of the things that's important to understand is that this process does have quite a number of phases to it. You have to be able to look across all of the areas that are involved in the document management, how they're created, how they're stored, how they're accessed, how they're approved, who has access to them, who doesn't have access to them. So there's a whole set of security issues that need to be taken into account as well. It's not just storing the document. You've also got to make sure that the access that's provided is correct. And if this process is done, it can save an immense amount as far as operational efficiencies. It can save a huge amount as far as IT costs and the cost of maintenance, especially if you can get rid of your legacy systems. And for those people that have responsibility within the organisation, ensuring compliance with regulations is a very critical part. There have been people that have gone to jail because they haven't conformed with some of these regulations regarding information access and storage and retrieval. So it's a growing area where people need to be looking very closely at what their policies are and what their processes are around enterprise content management. But as I said, if it's done properly, there are huge benefits that can be made that can be gained by organisations. At the end of the day, the cost of doing the process can be reduced a little bit, but most of the savings are around the actual physical movement of documents around the business and the retrieval of those documents when required. So I think that is essentially what I think the main message that we want to get across is that this process is important. It can add significant business efficiency to your operation. It's not just about storing documents. It's about how do you store those documents, why are you storing those documents, who has access to those documents, which business process is using those documents, so you can also make sure that you're storing only the documents that you do need to store and not everything that comes across your desk. So with that, I'd like to hand back to Alex. And we can take some questions if there are any.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions that came in from our audience. Lily, the first one is for you. It is regarding how did you get the business buy-in for the project?
How did we get the business buy-in? So I think the existing processes that they have today were reason enough. You know, they spend money to hire temps to apply barcode labels, and we've got people in our tax department that are manually looking up using a VIN to try to match that to an account number. Just a lot of this manual work that could be automated, and it's, you know, right in front of their faces. So I think they had bought in before it even came across IT's desk. I mean, it's just it was obvious that something needed to be done, and it was making sure that we had the funds to do it. But once management was able to see that, you know, there were these far-reaching benefits beyond just saving money, but when you look at morale and you know, just efficiency, improving customer service, it would be a huge win for them to do this, and they did.
Okay, great. Peter, I have a question for you. Should you look at normalizing your data before archival?
Okay, thanks, Jody. Yeah, that's a very good question, and the answer is yes, you should. Although the cost of storage is going down, it's still quite a major cost to most organisations, and you really want to make sure that you've actually standardised and normalised the information, got rid of duplicates before you store it. Maybe Lily can give you an answer and give people some idea about the number of duplicate documents that were living in their old systems that were removed before it got moved to the new storage system.
Yeah, we had over 500,000 duplicate documents in there that we cleaned out, and we're finding more every day.
So by going through the process of normalizing and standardizing and deduplication of the information before archiving, I think it saves a lot. It makes sure as well that when you are pulling up these documents, that they are the right documents, that you're actually sure that you've actually got the right documents stored. I hope that answers the question.
It sounds like it did. Thank you very much, Peter. We're just going to be savvy about our time right now, so if there are any other questions, please let us know. Otherwise, thank you very much, Lily and Peter, for helping us out with our webinar today. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.